YouTube, what's going on? It's J&A Exotics and welcome back. Now we all work pretty hard for our money, right? So why are we just gonna go throw it away and spend it on useless things? Well, today I wanted to talk to you guys about the top 10 things that I think are a waste of money in the reptile hobby. Now, let's jump into it. Now you might see some things on this list that you've already seen in other videos, but that's because these items are just flat out pointless and they are not good products. But number 10 on today's list is going to be heat rocks. Now I personally cannot stand heat rocks at all. I think they're a terrible product, and I think every manufacturer who makes a heat rock should just pull them off the shelves and never sell them again. Now reptiles sense heat faster from a heat source from above, like the sun shining down on them, rather than a heat source coming from below onto their stomachs. Now heat rocks have the potential to throw off temperatures that are just way too hot for your reptile. Your reptile's not going to be able to sense it, and it's going to get burned, dehydrated, and it could possibly kill your reptile. Now yes, some people can argue that in the wild, some reptiles can get burned and the same exact things can happen to them. But in captivity, we are not trying to replicate the bads that can happen in nature. These animals are our pets and we are responsible for keeping them safe. We're also responsible for providing them with adequate living conditions so they can live a long, happy, and healthy life. Honestly, heat rocks are just garbage. Throw them in the trash, never use them again. Now, number 9 on today's list is going to be reptile carpets. Now these things are just disgusting and they are a breeding ground for bacteria. Now personally, I just don't like reptile carpet at all from my experiences with it because 1, it gets dirty fast, you always have to wash it. 2, it stains very easy. And 3, your reptiles, like their claws, can get stuck with inside the carpet. Now take bearded dragons for example. They have long, sharp, curled claws that can easily get stuck within the carpet. Now your bearded dragon can't move and it can potentially pull its nail out or hurt itself trying to break free from the reptile carpet. Now I've actually seen pictures on the internet of a leopard gecko that what I'm assuming happened was it went for an insect and it missed and its tiny teeth actually got stuck within the reptile carpet. Again, not only can this potentially hurt your gecko, but that can be extremely stressful, and stress is not good for any reptile's health. Honestly, if you're going for a very simple setup, I would personally recommend using paper towels over a reptile carpet. It's going to be cheaper, easier to clean and replace, and you're not going to have to worry about your reptile's teeth getting stuck in it. Now, number 8 on today's list is going to be heat pads. Now, I am guilty of using heat pads myself in the past, but I have always kept them on a thermostat to regulate their temperatures. Now, as long as heat pads are regulated on a thermostat, they're not necessarily a terrible product, but it's very unnatural for a reptile to get a heat source coming from underneath rather than from up above. Now, just like heat rocks too, if you don't have these things regulated on a thermostat, they can get way too hot for your reptile. When I was younger and not knowing any better, I've actually had a tank crack because the heat pad got so hot, and when I lifted the tank off to do maintenance, I seen the crack and I had no idea what was going on. But later on in my adult life, I now realize it's because it was way too hot for the glass. Thankfully, the gecko in that enclosure was not harmed. I had a deep enough substrate layer, so the gecko never received a burn from that, but I did learn a valuable lesson from it. I was also extremely young at the time and new to my reptile keeping career, so I really didn't even know that could happen. With so many great heating elements out there right now on the market, it's not really a viable option to use a heat pad when it's such an unnatural way for your reptile to obtain its heat. Now, number 6 on today's list is going to be pre-built waterfalls. Now, hear me out. These things are actually really cool products, I think, for outside use of a reptile enclosure, not necessarily inside use. Let me explain. Now, many moons ago, I ended up buying Zoomed's skull-shaped LED waterfall, and this thing looked absolutely insane. It reminded me a lot of the Skull Island from the Kong movie. I also had a fogger, so when the fog came down, it kind of sat on top of the water with the LED lights, and to me, this just looked absolutely insane. Now, I ended up buying this waterfall for my white tree frogs enclosure, and they were substantially smaller at the time. They were just babies, and little did I know this entire thing was just going to turn into a nightmare. At first, for about a week or so, everything was good. Waterfall was running. I didn't see any issues. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I had no water flow. So I said, what's going on? I ended up taking the thing apart and it was clogged. Just from the frogs being in the enclosure and jumping in the waterfall, I received an ample amount of Reptisoil and cocoa husk clogging up the filter of my waterfall. So you might be thinking, what's the big deal? You had to clean it. I ended up having to do this several times a week or else the waterfall wouldn't work because the frogs are constantly in and out of the water. Now around 2 or 3 months down the road, I heard the waterfall humming when I woke up in the morning and I didn't see any water trickling down from it. So I said, okay, no big deal, situation normal. I just have to clean it, right? Well, overnight the pump ended up getting clogged on the waterfall and the pump burnt out on me. Now at the time the pump cost me around $70, but my point is I could have achieved the same exact goal with a water bowl for $5 that all I had to do was change the water every single day. Now enclosures with built-in water portions with waterfalls are definitely the way to go if you do want a waterfall inside your enclosure. As far as the pre-made ones, just leave them outside the tank. They look cool and they're going to last a lot longer. Now, number 5 on today's list is going to be those extendable snake hooks. Now, when I look at these extendable snake hooks, right off the bat, I see 3 things that catch my eye that I do not like about them. Number 1, the hook at the end of the snake hook is not that big, so you're very limited on what species you can actually handle with these snake hooks. Number 2, they don't extend out that far. So if you're trying to control and handle a larger, heavier snake, you're not going to have good leverage. And number 3, these snake hooks are made out of cheap and flimsy metals, so if you do so decide to try to handle a larger, heavier snake with them, odds are they're going to just snap, bend, and break on you. Now, there is a saying, if you buy cheap, you buy twice. Now, I guarantee you, if you try to buy these extendable snake hooks and you're trying to handle larger snakes, you're going to be buying a lot more than twice, probably a few dozen times. Honestly, just save up your money and invest in a better snake hook. You're not going to be limited on the species that you can handle with it, and you're going to have it for a lot longer. Now, number 5 is going to be analog thermometers. Now, I think every company, at least every company that I can think of right now, makes a variation of an analog thermometer, and they probably shouldn't. These things are not accurate at all. Now with these analog thermometers, I've seen them as little as 3 degrees Fahrenheit off, and I've seen them all the way up to 8 degrees Fahrenheit off. This is not good. It is your responsibility to make sure the temperatures of your reptile enclosures are correct, so invest in a good thermometer. Now when it comes to making sure that all the temperatures are correct in my reptiles enclosures, every single enclosure is equipped with a digital thermometer. And just to make sure those thermometers are reading correctly, I also have this digital thermometer. Temperatures being as accurate as possible are extremely crucial to your reptile's health and survival. With how inconsistent the readings are on these products, I would not cheap out and buy an analog thermometer. Now with a lot of digital thermometers, they have a probe, so you're going to be able to take this probe and put it anywhere within the enclosure to make sure that specific spot is the temperature that you're going to need it to be. Now, number 4 on today's list is going to be tank decor. Now I'm specifically speaking about branches and rocks. Although you can get great products in the store like cork rounds, I personally think cork is a great product. I have an obsession with it right now. But if you don't have the money for cork rounds, there are great alternatives right outside in the woods. Now you can do research on what species of trees are safe for reptiles, go into the woods, find a tree branch, take it home, slow cook it in an oven at the correct temperatures that are also listed online. You cook it in an oven to kill unwanted pests and parasites within the wood, and just like that, when it's done, you now have free tank decor. Now you can do the same exact thing with rocks. You can go out, find rocks that you think are cool and look pretty. You can come home, boil them in distilled water, and just like that, again, you have more free tank decor. Just keep in mind, these branches and rocks that you just got from outside are going to be a lot heavier than the ones that you find in pet stores. Now I'm currently making an enclosure right now for my green keel bellies right behind me, but I literally just did this exact thing for their new enclosure. It takes a little bit more time, effort, and research, but you're going to save yourself a lot of money. Now, number 3 on today's list is going to be substrates. Now you can go into any Petco or pet store, you can buy sand, Repti soil, jungle mix, cocoa fiber, etc. But you can go to your local hardware store and buy very similar products in much larger bulk for a fraction of the price. Now let's just take sand for example. You can go over to Petco, you can buy a bag of sand for 14 bucks, and it's going to be this big, and it's not going to be a good bang for your buck. But you can literally go to Home Depot, you can buy a 50-pound bag of place sand for only $6. That's going to be completely safe to use for your reptiles, and you're going to save a lot of money. You can also find larger quantities of natural mulches and topsoils for a fraction of the cost over at the hardware store. Now, if you're going to be doing this, you do need to make sure that your topsoils and mulches are not treated with any chemicals or pesticides within them, because that can be toxic for your animals. But honestly, as long as you're careful and you do your research and you know what you're buying, this can be a very effective way to buy substrates for your enclosures and save a ton of money. Now, number 2 on today's list is going to be compact UVB bulbs. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, if you see this hood and this hood right here, are you crazy right now because you're literally using them? Well, I'm not. I use these hoods right here for really 2 main different reasons. As you can see right here, I'm just proving a point. I have T5 UVB bulbs on the back of all my enclosures. So if I have proper UVB in my reptiles, why do I have this? This is just for visible light. There's LEDs in here, so when I film and stuff, it makes it easier for me to see my reptiles. And number two, I have a cat, so I try to protect the top of the enclosures and the screens at all costs, because I do not want my cat breaking through the screen and eating my reptiles. But back to the UVB bulbs. These compact UVB bulbs not only do not span the entire enclosure, providing a good gradient of UVB for your reptile, but they produce little to no UVB. You're kind of just spending 40 to 60 bucks on a light bulb that's not really providing a lot of good health benefits to your reptile. Unless you keep that UVB bulb close to your reptile, and your reptile literally sits in that one spot all day, which will not, you're really just wasting electricity. Now, it's going to be more money up front, yes, but if you just spend the money and go and buy one of those T5 fixtures, it's going to be a lot more beneficial for your reptiles. Now, number one on today's list is literally going to be a combination of a lot of things I don't like that I covered in this video, and they are going to be reptile starter kits. Now, some of you might be thinking, why is a reptile kit even on this list at number one? You can literally get everything that you're going to need for your reptile at a fraction of the price. Let's look at Bearded Dragon starter kits, for example. It's going to come with a 20-gallon long enclosure, a reptile carpet, a compact UVB bulb, and an analog thermometer. So right off the rip, let's just talk about the enclosure. You're going to have to buy a brand new tank for your bearded dragon relatively fast. A juvenile bearded dragon is going to outgrow a 20-gallon enclosure within just a couple of months. On top of that, the screens on top of a lot of enclosures have the potential to block out a lot of UVB light. Now, with the compact UVB bulbs that just screw into the dome fixtures, they already don't produce a large amount of UVB. So now it's being reduced by the screen on top. Your bearded dragon inside this enclosure is never going to get the adequate UVB that it requires. On top of your bearded dragon never getting proper UVB that it requires, your temperatures are also not going to be anywhere near correct because you're using a cheap analog thermometer. Now I'll throw in the reptile carpet just so it can stink, and what's a few missing claws anyways, and now you have yourself a recipe for a disaster. Your bearded dragon is being set up for failure early on within its life, and it's not going to be able to thrive. You're honestly better off just going out and buying all the stuff yourself, picking out all the correct things that you're going to need for your animal. Just because it seems like a good deal does not mean it is actually a good deal, and it does not mean that it's the right stuff for your animal. Thank you guys so much for watching, and thank you for listening to me rant. If you guys enjoyed the video, smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, drop a comment down below, let me know what you think of the list, and I'll see you in the next one.